Absurd diets and habits of Golden Age Hollywood stars. The glamorous stars of Hollywood's Golden Age hid some of the most shocking, bizarre, and downright disturbing health habits ever documented. These weren't just quirky celebrity diets. They were dangerous, deranged regimens that studio doctors actually encouraged, strange rituals performed behind mansion doors, and self-destructive routines that ultimately killed some of cinema's greatest talents. I've uncovered the most genuinely bizarre habits that classic Hollywood stars swore by, practices that would horrify modern doctors and nutritionists. From drinking blood cocktails for vitality to deliberately exposing themselves to radiation for beauty, these weren't just bad ideas. They were disturbing windows into the dark reality behind Hollywood's perfect facades. And the most shocking habit of all, it helped create one of film's most iconic looks, while slowly killing the star who made it famous. But what drove these otherwise intelligent people to such extreme measures? Was it just vanity, or something more sinister about the studio system that treated humans like products to be modified and controlled? Stay with me, because these bizarre habits reveal the true cost of Golden Age stardom, a world where beautiful people were literally dying to stay camera ready. By the end, you'll see these beloved icons not as the glamorous figures from your favorite classics, but as victims of an industry that valued perfection at any price, even if that price was their health, sanity, or ultimately their lives. Number 1. Jean Harlow, the deadly platinum process. Men go ape over platinum blondes. I should know, I've been platinum for years. Jean Harlow's dazzling white blonde hair made her Hollywood's original bombshell, but the process that created her signature look was literally killing her. Unlike the gentle bleaching used today, Harlow's platinum color came from a brutal weekly ritual using a mixture of household bleach, Clorox, ammonia, Lux Flakes, and harsh soap. This caustic concoction burned her scalp so severely that she often couldn't touch her head for days afterward. Her personal hairdresser, Alfred Pagano, revealed that the process frequently left Harlow in tears, with chemical burns and open sores on her scalp that required medical treatment. The mixture was so damaging that clumps of her hair would fall out during treatment, requiring careful styling to hide the thinning spots and bald patches. MGM knew about the dangers. Studio makeup head Sidney Galaroff documented his concerns about Harlow's deteriorating hair condition in memos to production chiefs. Their response wasn't to change her hair color, but to schedule filming around her bleach days, ensuring her pain wouldn't interfere with production schedules. The most disturbing aspect? Modern medical experts believe this weekly chemical exposure significantly contributed to the kidney failure that killed her at just 26. The toxins from years of scalp absorption, combined with her crash diets of tomato juice and grapefruit, created the perfect storm for the kidney disease that would claim her life during the filming of Saratoga. Her final weeks on set were a horror show of studio exploitation. Suffering from fatal kidney failure, but misdiagnosed with flu, Harlow could barely stand. MGM doctors pumped her with amphetamines to keep her functioning for the cameras while her body was shutting down. Co-star Clark Gable reportedly noticed her gray complexion and difficulty breathing, begging producers to halt production. They refused until she physically collapsed on set. In the ultimate Hollywood tragedy, the iconic platinum blonde look that made Harlow famous directly contributed to her premature death, the ultimate price for studio-manufactured beauty in Hollywood's golden age. Number 2. Errol Flynn, blood cocktails and raw organ meats. Any man who has $10,000 left when he dies is a failure. Swashbuckling star Errol Flynn maintained his legendary sexual stamina and on-screen athleticism through a diet so bizarre and disturbing that even his hard-partying Hollywood friends were shocked. According to his autobiography and accounts from his personal chef, Flynn consumed a daily energy cocktail containing fresh raw beef blood mixed with cognac. This wasn't occasional vampire roleplay. Flynn downed this blood mixture every morning, claiming it provided the life force of the animal without the heaviness of digesting meat. His chef revealed that Flynn insisted on watching the blood being drained from fresh beef to ensure it hadn't oxidized before consuming it, a ritual that horrified household staff. Flynn complemented his blood cocktails with a diet centered on raw organ meats. He particularly favored raw liver, which he consumed daily, sometimes eating it directly off the cutting board before his chef could properly prepare it. According to his friend David Niven, Flynn would bite into raw liver like an apple, claiming the enzymes would be destroyed by cooking. The most extreme aspect of Flynn's diet was his pre-filming strength regimen. Before physically demanding roles, Flynn would increase his raw meat consumption to include raw heart, kidneys, and brains, believing each organ would strengthen its counterpart in his own body. This quasi-cannibalistic approach horrified Warner Brothers executives, who forbade Flynn from discussing his dietary habits in interviews. Flynn's strange diet reflected his obsession with virility and youth as his health declined from years of excessive drinking and drug use. Studio doctors warned him about parasites and bacteria from his raw meat consumption, but Flynn ignored them, telling his objective Burma co-star, "Intestinal worms keep you thin, and medicine just makes you weak." The tragic irony? Flynn's bizarre diet likely accelerated his deterioration. He died at just 50, looking 2 decades older, his body ravaged by hepatitis, tuberculosis, and multiple parasitic infections, diseases directly connected to his consumption of raw animal products. The man once considered Hollywood's most handsome star destroyed himself through the very regimen he believed was maintaining his famous vitality. Number 3. Mae West, champagne enemas and bedroom temperature control. When I'm good, I'm very good, but when I'm bad, I'm better. Mae West built her career on sexual innuendo, but her private health regimen was more shocking than any double entendre she delivered on screen. According to multiple biographers who interviewed her household staff, West maintained one of Hollywood's strangest beauty routines centered around internal cleansing and extreme temperature regulation. The most bizarre element was her regular champagne enemas, a practice confirmed by multiple independent sources, including her personal assistant, several biographers, and medical receipts found among her papers after death. West believed this unusual procedure cleansed her digestive system while allowing the champagne's benefits to be absorbed without the bloating effects of drinking it. She reportedly insisted on vintage champagne for this purpose, telling her assistant, "Darling, Dom Perignon inside keeps everything fine outside." West complemented this internal regimen with obsessive control over her bedroom environment. She maintained her sleeping quarters at precisely 68.5 degrees Fahrenheit, with humidity between 40 to 45%, using multiple thermometers and hygrometers to monitor conditions. According to her housekeeper, West would wake staff at any hour if these conditions fluctuated, believing even slight temperature changes caused premature aging. Her bathroom rituals were equally extreme. West took 3 daily baths in water that progressively cooled from hot to tepid to ice cold, a process that required staff to prepare each bath precisely 95 minutes apart. Between these baths, she would rest in specific positions to allow gravity to work on different parts of the body, according to notes she kept on her beauty routines. West's most unusual beauty belief concerned mirrors. She had her bedroom and bathroom arranged with mirrors positioned at specific angles that she claimed created rejuvenating energy reflections. Her personal secretary revealed that West would spend hours finding the exact positions where light reflected between multiple mirrors onto her face, believing this light therapy maintained her youthful appearance. The psychological motivation behind these extreme habits became clearer as West aged. As an older woman in youth-obsessed Hollywood, she developed increasingly elaborate routines to maintain the sex symbol status that defined her career. The private Mae West, meticulously monitoring room temperature and receiving champagne enemas, contrasted sharply with her carefree public persona, revealing the exhausting work behind her famous quip that "you're never too old to become younger." Number 4. Clark Gable, the king of Hollywood's rubber suit torture. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. The rugged masculine image of Clark Gable, the king of Hollywood, was maintained through methods that amounted to studio-sanctioned torture. According to multiple MGM documents and accounts from his colleagues, Gable was subjected to weight control techniques that would violate modern labor laws and health standards. The most extreme method, documented in studio correspondence and Gable's personal letters, was the infamous rubber suit treatment. Before filming romantic leads opposite much younger actresses, MGM forced Gable to wear a full-body rubber suit similar to modern sauna suits while exercising. This dangerous practice caused extreme sweating and temporary water weight loss, but no sustainable fat reduction. According to David Niven's memoirs, Gable was found nearly unconscious from dehydration multiple times times after these studio-mandated sessions. MGM controlled every aspect of Gable's physicality, treating his body as studio property. Production records from Gone with the Wind reveal that during filming, Gable was limited to just 1,000 calories daily, less than half the recommended minimum for a man of his size and activity level. This diet consisted primarily of black coffee, cigarettes, and small portions of lean protein, leaving him constantly hungry during the physically demanding shoot. The psychological toll of this bodily control emerges in Gable's private correspondence. In letters to his father, he expressed increasing resentment about studio control over his physical appearance. "They own me like a prize bull, measuring and weighing me as if I'm livestock being readied for auction." Most disturbing was the studio's enforcement mechanism. MGM assigned a staff member to monitor Gable's food intake on and off set, reporting any violations directly to Louis B. Mayer. During the filming of Mutiny on the Bounty, Gable was actually fined for unauthorized weight gain, with the amount deducted directly from his paycheck, a practice documented in MGM's accounting records. After his MGM contract ended in 1954, Gable's first independent act was gaining 20 pounds and growing a beard, small rebellions against decades of micromanaged physicality. But the damage was done. Years of crash dieting, dehydration, and physical stress likely contributed to the heart attack that killed him shortly after filming The Misfits at just 59. The King of Hollywood had been slowly dethroned by the very methods that maintained his regal image. Number 5. Marlene Dietrich, the Ice Queen's beauty torture. "I dress for the image, not for myself, not for the public, not for fashion, not for men." Marlene Dietrich's exotic allure and remarkable agelessness came through beauty practices so extreme they bordered on self-torture. According to her daughter Maria Riva's detailed biography and Dietrich's own extensive personal records, the German-born star maintained her famous bone structure through methods that would horrify modern beauty experts. The most extreme of these was her face taping regimen, thoroughly documented in her personal photographs and by her makeup artists. Each night, Dietrich used surgical tape to pull her facial skin upward at the temples, jawline, and neck, essentially performing a nightly facelift. She slept with this painful arrangement, which left compression marks so deep they required heavy makeup to conceal the following day. Dietrich didn't stop at facial taping. To maintain her famous silhouette in later years, she employed a system of body binding using surgical elastic and metal stays, essentially wearing a modified corset under even casual clothing. Her daughter revealed that these bindings were so tight they left permanent indentations in her flesh and restricted her breathing to shallow gasps. Her dietary regimen was equally severe. Dietrich survived primarily on clear broth, raw egg yolks, and cognac, a combination she claimed preserved beauty from the inside out. According to kitchen records kept by her housekeepers, there were entire months when solid food never appeared on Dietrich's personal menu, only various broths and alcohol. Perhaps most disturbing was Dietrich's approach to sleep. To avoid face sleeping, lying with her face against the pillow, she developed a method of sleeping while sitting upright, her head held in position by a custom-made sling attached to her headboard. This uncomfortable arrangement prevented what she called sleep-induced wrinkles, but resulted in chronic neck pain documented in her medical records. The psychological dimensions of Dietrich's extreme beauty regimen become clear in her private writings. In diaries kept throughout her later years, she explicitly connected her rigid beauty maintenance to her survival of World War II and escape from Nazi Germany. As she wrote, "Control of one's appearance is control of one's fate. Those who let themselves go disappear. I refuse to disappear." What began as professional image maintenance eventually became psychological compulsion. In her final years, when Dietrich refused to be photographed or see visitors, she still performed her full beauty regimen daily, taping her face and binding her body despite seeing no one but household staff, suggesting these rituals had become essential to her very sense of self, not merely her public image. Number 6, Cary Grant, LSD therapy and spiritual fasting. Everyone wants to be Cary Grant. Even I want to be Cary Grant. Behind Cary Grant's debonair image lay one of Hollywood's most surprising wellness routines, extensive psychedelic therapy combined with spiritual fasting practices. Unlike many star habits that emerged through gossip, Grant's LSD use is thoroughly documented. He spoke openly about it in interviews and even promoted its therapeutic benefits. Between 1958 and 1961, Grant participated participated in approximately 100 supervised LSD therapy sessions at a respected California clinic. At the time, LSD was legal and used in psychotherapy before becoming associated with counterculture in the later 1960s. These sessions weren't recreational drug use, but structured therapeutic experiences under medical supervision. In a remarkable 1959 interview with the Los Angeles Times, Grant directly addressed his LSD therapy. "I have been born again. I have been through a psychiatric experience which has completely changed me. I had to face things about myself which I never admitted, which I didn't know existed." What made Grant's regimen particularly unusual was how he combined psychedelic therapy with fasting. According to his third wife, Betsy Drake, Grant would prepare for LSD sessions with 24 to 48-hour fasts, believing this enhanced the clarity of his experiences. After sessions, he would continue fasting while journaling his insights. The psychological motivation for Grant's unusual habits stemmed from his troubled childhood. Born Archibald Leach in poverty-stricken Bristol, England, he had been told his mother was dead, only to discover as an adult that his father had committed her to a mental institution. This trauma created the insecurities that plagued him despite his successful transformation into Cary Grant. Through his combination of LSD therapy and fasting, Grant claimed to find healing from these childhood wounds. He credited these practices with enabling him to retire from acting at the height of his fame and financial success, a rare decision in status-obsessed Hollywood. "The effect of LSD is to free up your subconscious," Grant explained. "When you've gone through it, you know you're a different person. I've learned to live with myself, to accept my shortcomings. I'm now happy." What makes Grant's case particularly fascinating is how he used what many would consider extreme measures, not for physical transformation, but for psychological healing, addressing the gap between his perfect public image and his private insecurities through methods that were revolutionary for his time and social position. Number 7. Marilyn Monroe, the magnifying glass inspection ritual. Hollywood is a place where they'll pay you $1,000 for a kiss and 50 cents for your soul. The woman whose hourglass figure defined feminine beauty for generations followed a diet that would shock modern nutritionists. In a 1952 interview with Pageant magazine, Monroe detailed her daily eating habits with surprising candor. Her typical breakfast? Raw eggs whisked into warm milk. "I break 2 raw eggs into warm milk and whip them up," she explained in the interview. "I drink them while I'm dressing." This protein-heavy, salmonella-risking breakfast was her primary source of morning nutrition. What makes Monroe's diet particularly unusual was her approach to the rest of the day. She skipped lunch entirely, a practice now known to slow metabolism, before eating a dinner that could only be described as peculiar in its specificity. "My dinners at home are startlingly simple," she told Pageant. "Every night I stop at the market and pick up a steak, lamb chops, or liver, which I broil in the oven. I usually eat 4 or 5 raw carrots with my meat, and that's all." The strangest aspect of her routine was her meticulous inspection of these carrots. According to multiple sources, including her housekeeper Lena Pepitone, Monroe would examine each carrot with a magnifying glass, searching for imperfections or dirt before consuming them. This level of food scrutiny suggests an early manifestation of obsessive tendencies that would later be recognized as disordered eating behaviors. What's particularly revealing is how Monroe described her own relationship with food. "I've been told my eating habits are absolutely bizarre, but I don't think so." This disconnect between her perception and reality offers a glimpse into how normalized extreme diets had become in Hollywood's star system. Despite her seemingly restrictive diet, Monroe did allow herself one indulgence. "I'm sure I couldn't allow myself this luxury were I stage actress," she admitted, "but my tight lacings are all done with zippers. So in between scenes, I sometimes eat a hot fudge sundae." This combination of near starvation, punctuated by occasional sugar-laden treats, reflects the binge restriction cycle now recognized as a hallmark of disordered eating, a pattern that would become increasingly common among Hollywood stars in the decades that followed. Number 8. Judy Garland, the studio-manufactured addiction. "I was born with a drive to please, to be what people wanted me to be." Judy Garland's tragic relationship with food and substances began not through personal choice, but as a studio-mandated regimen forced upon her when she was just a teenager at MGM. From age 14, studio executives considered Garland too fat, despite her normal adolescent physique. Their solution remains one of Hollywood's most disturbing examples of studio control, a diet consisting primarily of chicken soup, black coffee, and 80 cigarettes daily, the latter provided by the studio specifically to suppress her appetite. According to multiple documented accounts, including those from Garland's daughter, Lorna Luft. MGM chief Louis B. Mayer personally monitored Garland's weight, calling her "my little hunchback" when he considered her overweight. Studio handlers followed Garland to the commissary to ensure she didn't eat regular meals, removing plates from in front of her if she attempted to eat forbidden foods. The most devastating aspect of Garland's studio diet was the introduction of pills. MGM doctors prescribed amphetamines to suppress her appetite during the day, followed by barbiturates to help her sleep at night, creating the cycle of upper and downer dependency that would plague her for the rest of her life. During filming of The Wizard of Oz, 16-year-old Garland was limited to soup and coffee while wearing a painful corset that further restricted her breathing and eating. Studio memos from this period, preserved in MGM archives, show executives discussing her weight in dehumanizing terms, treating her body as studio property to be controlled and modified. The psychological impact was profound and lasting. Garland developed severe body dysmorphia, seeing herself as perpetually overweight, despite being quite slim throughout most of her career. This distorted self-image contributed to her lifelong struggle with eating disorders and substance abuse. In interviews late in her life, Garland directly connected her adult problems to these early studio-enforced habits. They had us working days and nights on end. They'd give us pills to keep us on our feet long after we were exhausted. Then they'd take us to the studio hospital and knock us out with sleeping pills, after which they'd wake us up with more pills. Garland's MGM-prescribed diet represents one of Hollywood's darkest chapters. A talented teenager essentially sacrificed to studio beauty standards through methods that permanently damaged her physical and mental health, contributing directly to her death at just 47. Number 9. Bela Lugosi, the blood-type diet that fueled Dracula. I am Dracula. Bela Lugosi's portrayal of Count Dracula made him a horror icon, but few fans knew he maintained a diet almost as bizarre as his famous characters. According to multiple biographers and Lugosi's own correspondence, the Hungarian actor followed an unusual regimen based on consuming foods that matched his own blood type decades before the blood-type diet became a modern fad. This strange dietary approach began after Lugosi consulted a Hungarian nutritionist who claimed people should eat according to their blood chemistry. For Lugosi, who had type B blood, this meant a diet heavily focused on organ meats, particularly liver, kidneys, and heart. According to his cook, who later spoke to biographers, Lugosi consumed these organs barely cooked, believing that overcooking destroyed vital blood energies. Lugosi's diet became increasingly extreme as his career declined and his morphine addiction intensified in the 1940s and 50s. According to his fifth wife, Lillian, he developed ritualistic eating patterns, consuming organ meats only after sundown and refusing to eat in the presence of others. This behavior, initially adopted to hide his addiction, gradually transformed into genuine dietary superstition. Perhaps most unsettling was Lugosi's consumption of blood itself. While not drinking human blood like his character, Lugosi regularly consumed raw beef blood in a Hungarian soup called vörös borsmartas, believing it would strengthen his own blood. According to friends who dined with him, he would request extra blood in the preparation, sometimes drinking it separately before consuming the rest of the dish. The psychological dimensions of Lugosi's strange diet become clear in context of his troubled career. As he became increasingly typecast and struggled to find roles beyond horror, his identification with Dracula deepened. His unusual eating habits seemed to reflect a blurring of boundaries between himself and his most famous character, a merging of identity that intensified as his career opportunities narrowed. Lugosi's diet took a darker turn when combined with his addiction issues. According to medical records from his stays in rehabilitation facilities, doctors noted his refusal to follow standard recovery diets, insisting on his blood-type regimen even during detoxification. This nutritional imbalance likely complicated his recovery efforts and contributed to his deteriorating health. When Lugosi died in 1956, nearly broke and addicted to morphine, he was buried in his Dracula cape at his request, the ultimate symbol of how completely the character had consumed his identity. His strange diet, focused on blood and organs, represented another aspect of this tragic merger between actor and role, a man who, unable to escape his famous character, began to embody aspects of it even in his private habits. Number 10. Charlie Chaplin. color-coded food, and sleep manipulation. A day without laughter is a day wasted. Charlie Chaplin created some of cinema's most enduring images, but according to his son Charles Jr. and numerous staff accounts, his private habits were as peculiar as his iconic Little Tramp character. Chaplin's unusual health regimens centered around two primary fixations: color-coded eating and strategic sleep deprivation. Chaplin followed a strict color coordination system with his food, eating only foods of a single color each day. Mondays might be exclusively white foods: cauliflower, rice, fish. Tuesdays, red foods, tomatoes, red meat, and so on throughout the week. This wasn't just an aesthetic preference. Chaplin believed consuming similarly colored foods together optimized digestion and creative energy. His longtime chef Orlando Suero confirmed this practice, noting that Chaplin would become visibly distressed if foods of different colors were served together. The chef recalled Chaplin sending back a white fish dish because it was garnished with green parsley, a color violation that he claimed would disrupt the body's processing system. Even more unusual was Chaplin's approach to sleep during filmmaking. According to multiple crew members who worked on his productions, Chaplin would deliberately deprive himself of sleep during crucial creative periods, sometimes remaining awake for 48 to 72 hours while filming key sequences. His longtime cameraman, Raleigh Tothero, recalled that during the shooting of City Lights, Chaplin stayed awake for nearly 3 days while filming the famous boxing scene, claiming that exhaustion revealed truth in comedy. What makes Chaplin's habits particularly significant is how they reflected his obsessive approach to his art. His color-coded eating wasn't primarily about health, but about maintaining control and routine amidst the chaos of creative work. Similarly, his strategic sleep deprivation was a deliberate attempt to access what he called the exhaustion zone, where inhibitions dissolve. The psychological aspects of Chaplin's unusual habits connect directly to his troubled childhood spent in extreme poverty and workhouses. The rigid food routines and controlled environment he created as an adult represented the stability he never experienced as a child. According to his oldest son, Chaplin would become notably anxious if his color-coded meals were prepared incorrectly, seeing this as a disruption of hard-won order in his life. As he aged, Chaplin's food rigidity reportedly intensified. His fourth wife, Una O'Neill, described in letters to friends how Chaplin would eat only specific foods prepared in precisely the same way day after day in his final years, a behavior that modern psychologists might identify as a response to early food insecurity. What began as creative eccentricity eventually evolved into rigid routine, showing how even one of cinema's greatest geniuses sought control and predictability through unusual dietary structures that provided stability his early life had lacked. Number 11. Ann Miller. Raw beef for tap dancing energy. I was so limber I could kick my leg over my head, but I had no real technique. Ann Miller's machine gun tap dancing made her a standout performer in MGM musicals of the 1940s and 50s. According to her co-stars and her own interviews, Miller maintained her phenomenal stamina through a diet habit so unusual it became legendary on studio lots, consuming raw ground beef between dance numbers. This peculiar practice is confirmed by multiple reliable sources, including fellow dancers and Miller's own statements to biographers. According to rehearsal pianist Leonard Atherton, Miller would keep a small container of raw ground beef in the rehearsal hall refrigerator. During breaks in dance sequences that could last 8 to 10 hours, she would consume small amounts of the uncooked meat, believing it provided superior energy compared to cooked protein. When asked about this unusual habit in a 1988 interview, Miller explained, "The raw meat went straight to my muscles without wasting energy on digestion. When you're doing 40 takes of a dance number in 3-inch heels, you need fuel that works fast." What makes Miller's raw meat consumption particularly noteworthy is how she integrated it into the larger studio culture. According to dancer Ann Sothern, other MGM performers briefly attempted to copy Miller's raw beef regimen but couldn't stomach it. Miller reportedly mocked their squeamishness, claiming her Texas upbringing had given her a stomach lined with cast iron. Studio nutritionists attempted to dissuade Miller from this practice, concerned about food poisoning. According to production notes from Easter Parade, the studio commissary eventually began preparing specially seared beef for Miller, charred on the outside but completely raw in the center, as a compromise measure. Miller maintained this unusual eating habit throughout her performing career, only stopping in her 60s when concerns about food safety became more prominent. When asked if she worried about the health risks of raw meat consumption, Miller reportedly quipped, "Honey, in my day, we were more afraid of missing a step than catching a little bug." Unlike many stars whose extreme habits contributed to their decline, Miller lived to 80 and remained physically active well into her senior years, suggesting her bizarre raw meat diet might actually have provided the benefits she claimed, making her case a rare example of a Hollywood extreme practice that didn't end in tragedy. Number 12. Joan Crawford, wire hangers and boiling facial immersions. I, Joan Crawford, I believe in the dollar. Everything I earn, I spend. Joan Crawford's infamous obsession with cleanliness extended far beyond the no wire hangers moment immortalized in Mommy Dearest. According to multiple household staff members and her own personal writings, Crawford maintained beauty and cleanliness routines so extreme they bordered on self-harm. Crawford's most physically punishing beauty ritual involved a process she called ice fire facials. According to her longtime housekeeper and multiple biographers, this routine began with Crawford plunging her face into a bowl of boiling water, not just hot, actually boiling, for a few seconds, then immediately into ice water. She would repeat this extreme temperature shock up to 25 times in a row, believing it shocked the skin into tightness and improved circulation. The physical effects were immediately visible. Crawford's face would be bright red and swollen after these treatments, requiring her to schedule them carefully before public appearances to allow the inflammation to subside. According to makeup artists who worked with her, Crawford would often have visible capillary damage that required heavy foundation to conceal. Beyond her facial routines, Crawford maintained cleaning rituals that went far beyond normal hygiene. According to multiple household employees, she cleaned her entire bathroom with pure rubbing alcohol daily, scrubbing surfaces with surgical precision while wearing rubber gloves. This wasn't delegated to staff. Crawford performed these cleaning rituals personally, considering them essential to her well-being. Perhaps most unusual was Crawford's practice of raw meat facials, a treatment she used decades before modern vampire facials made headlines. According to her personal recipes preserved in her estate papers, Crawford would grind raw veal into a paste, apply it to her face, and lie motionless for an hour before rinsing with ice water. She claimed this treatment transferred the life energy of the meat to her skin. The psychological dimension of Crawford's extreme habits becomes clearer in context of her poverty-stricken childhood. Born Lucille Lesueur and raised in deprivation, her adult fixation with cleanliness and physical perfection represented control she never had in early life. As her friend Adela Rogers St. John's observed, Joan didn't just want cleanliness, she needed absolute sterility around her to feel safe. Crawford maintained these punishing routines throughout her life, even as they became more difficult with age. Her personal assistant reported finding her passed out on the bathroom floor multiple times in her 60s, having fainted from the extreme temperature changes of her ice fire facials, yet she continued the practice regardless of the physical risk. Unlike some stars whose unusual habits remained private, Crawford actively promoted her extreme beauty routines in women's magazines, encouraging readers to adopt practices that were potentially harmful. This public advocacy transformed her personal compulsions into beauty standards that influenced a generation of women, extending the damage beyond her own bathroom to society at large. Number 13. Buster Keaton. Whiskey-only film diets and intentional injuries. Think slow, act fast. Buster Keaton's astounding physical comedy and death-defying stunts required a body capable of extraordinary performance. According to his autobiography and accounts from film crews, Keaton maintained this capability through one of Hollywood's strangest performance regimens, consuming nothing but whiskey during filming periods combined with deliberately injuring himself to maintain pain tolerance. This whiskey-only approach during production is documented by numerous colleagues and in Keaton's own writings. According to his cameraman Elgin Leslie, Keaton would consume no solid food while shooting his most physically demanding films, surviving solely on whiskey, typically bourbon, from morning until night. This wasn't alcoholism, but a calculated performance strategy. Keaton believed liquids were lighter in the body, allowing more physical freedom, while the alcohol dulled pain from inevitable injuries. Perhaps most shocking was Keaton's deliberate injury regimen. Having grown up in a vaudeville act where his father literally threw him across stages as the human mop, Keaton developed a systematic approach to pain that involved intentionally subjecting himself to controlled injuries to maintain his tolerance. According to crew members on The General, Keaton would begin each morning by deliberately falling down the studio stairs, not for comedy, but as physical preparation. Keaton's longtime physician, Dr. Morris Fishbein, confirmed this practice in interviews interviews after Keaton's death, noting that the comedian had essentially recalibrated his nervous system's response to pain through years of systematic exposure. Unlike modern stunt performers who train to avoid injury, Keaton trained specifically to endure it, creating a pain tolerance that allowed his most dangerous stunts. The psychological dimension of Keaton's extreme physical practices emerges in context of his abusive childhood. Thrown around stages since age 3 in his family's act, he developed a dissociative approach to his own body, treating it as a tool rather than a feeling entity. As his friend Harold Lloyd observed, Buster doesn't avoid pain, he expects it, almost welcomes it. It's the only way he knows how to work. Unlike many stars whose unusual habits contributed to their decline, Keaton's whiskey diet and pain conditioning actually served his career, enabling the extraordinary physical performances that made him famous. The toll came later. In his autobiography, Keaton acknowledged the cumulative damage of his methods, noting that by age 50, he had broken every major bone in his body at least once and developed significant hearing loss from repeated head trauma. What makes Keaton's case particularly fascinating is how he transformed childhood abuse into deliberate methodology, converting trauma into technique through practices modern performers would consider unthinkable. His whiskey diets and intentional injuries weren't self-destruction, but calculated professional tools, extreme measures that helped create some of cinema's most astonishing physical performances. Number 14. Rudolph Valentino, sleepless wall punching and raw egg yolks. Women are not in love with me, but with the picture of me on the screen. I am merely the canvas on which women paint their dreams. Rudolph Valentino, Hollywood's first great sex symbol, maintained his famous physique through training methods so extreme they would violate modern insurance requirements for actors. According to his trainer and multiple contemporary accounts, Valentino followed a regimen centered around deliberately punishing his body to maintain what he called the necessary suffering of physical perfection. The most shocking aspect of his training involved a wall-punching routine documented by both his personal staff and studio records. Valentino would punch solid wooden boards mounted on his home gym wall with bare fists until his knuckles bled, then continue punching. According to his trainer Enzo Fiormonte, a former professional boxer, Valentino believed hands toughened through damage created a more masculine screen presence that cameras could detect. This practice resulted in Valentino's hands being in a state of perpetual injury, with split knuckles and broken bones documented in Paramount Studio insurance reports. Makeup artists regularly had to conceal his damaged hands during filming, particularly challenging during romantic scenes where his hands would be prominently featured in close-ups. Valentino's diet was equally extreme. According to his cook, he consumed between 12 to 24 raw egg yolks daily, mixed with various ingredients depending on his current film role. When preparing for The Sheik, he mixed egg yolks with heavy cream and honey, believing this combination enhanced desert vigor. For Blood and Sand, he consumed egg yolks with tomato juice and raw garlic, a combination so pungent that co-star Nita Naldi complained about his breath during romantic scenes. Perhaps most unusual was Valentino's sleep discipline. Based on practices he claimed to have learned from Arab horsemen, Valentino deliberately restricted his sleep to 4 hours nightly, believing excessive sleep softened the masculine appearance. He maintained this extreme sleep deprivation for years, rising at 4 a.m. for his wall-punching regimen regardless of when filming had ended the previous night. The psychological aspects of Valentino's extreme practices reflect his insecurity as an Italian immigrant in xenophobic 1920s America. Often criticized as too feminine or foreign, despite his popularity with women, Valentino's punishing physical regimen represented his attempt to embody American masculine ideals through sheer will and physical punishment. The tragic irony? Valentino's extreme diet may have contributed to his early death at 31. Medical historians reviewing his autopsy reports suggest that his unusual diet, combined with untreated ulcers, created the conditions for the peritonitis that ultimately killed him, making his pursuit of physical perfection potentially fatal. These bizarre diets and habits reveal the dark reality behind Hollywood's golden age glamour, an industry that valued image over health, appearance over well-being, and marketability over humanity. From Jean Harlow's toxic hair treatments to Judy Garland's studio-enforced diet of pills and cigarettes, these stars paid physical prices for their screen perfection that often contributed to their premature deaths or declining health. What connects these diverse routines is how they reflect the dehumanizing aspects of the studio system. Stars weren't viewed as people with basic needs, but as valuable properties whose bodies required whatever modification would sell the most tickets, regardless of personal cost. Women faced impossible standards of thinness, while men underwent extreme measures to maintain the appearance of effortless strength. Perhaps most disturbing is how many of these harmful practices originated not with the stars themselves, but with studio executives and doctors who should have protected their health. MGM prescribed Judy Garland the amphetamines that would lead to lifelong addiction. Paramount knew the dangers of Harlow's platinum hair process, yet demanded its continuation. The next time you watch these luminous figures in classic films, remember the extreme and often dangerous measures that created those perfect images. Behind Harlow's platinum hair was a woman suffering chemical burns that contributed to her early death. Behind Valentino's masculine presence was a man punching walls until his hands bled. Behind Garland's vibrant performances was a teenager being systematically destroyed by the very studio profiting from her talent. These weren't just eccentric celebrity habits, but symptoms of an industry that considered stars disposable commodities to be maintained, modified, and eventually replaced. A system whose damaging legacy continues to influence how we think about bodies, beauty, and the true cost of physical perfection. What strange celebrity diet or habit shocked you most? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this exploration of Hollywood's hidden health extremes, please hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell to catch our next journey through cinema history.